Welcome to Jefferson Liberty Radio, the voice of the state of Jefferson in the Central Valley. I'm Matthew, and I'm joined by my co-host.
I'm Rudy.
Hey, Rudy, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic.
On this week's episode, we'll be discussing the State of Jefferson history, the news with Jeff Sessions, and the updates on the court case. So Matthew and I have decided that we would go and study the State of Jefferson movement before the 2013 movement, just to see where we got our name and our symbolism. And we would come back to each other and discuss our findings. I'm going to let Matthew discuss his findings first because they're very interesting.
Yeah, so it's really actually fascinating. State of Jefferson actually started way back in 1852 when a bill was introduced to the California State Legislature, then in Vallejo. And this bill failed, but a declaration was later signed by 23 men from Siskiyou County. In 1935, almost 50 years later, John Childs, a Crescent City judge, declared himself the governor of a new state. And he was protesting against poor road conditions and perceived injustices and neglect by the California State Legislature at that time.
You know, and that brings me into our movement just for a second, because they were running under the same representation ratio as we are today, 120. So 80 in the Assembly and 40 in the Senate. It strikes me that they didn't see that back then. But, well, we weren't in the 1960s yet with, I believe it was Reynolds versus Sims, where they destroyed pretty much having senators for each county. But I believe we were seeing the beginnings of that back then in the 40s. They just weren't represented correctly even back then.
Yeah, but they didn't exactly understand that representation was the core issue. They just saw some of these things like poor road conditions,
right,
and seeing some of the perceived injustices of the California State Legislature where they didn't really have any input to what was happening in their counties and their towns. And this led to a state election, actually, for governor on December 4th, 1941, where John Childs, this same judge from Crescent City, won the state governor election. But unfortunately, 3 days later, Pearl Harbor was bombed on the 7th, and we entered the Second World War, and Jefferson kind of got put on the back burner while we entered full force into the Second World War. Right.
It was a sign of showing solidarity against the Japanese and the Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. I mean, it just makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, my findings were mostly about where we got our name and where we got our symbol. You know, because those are important things, you know.
And we get questions about that all the time.
All the time, you know, all the time. I'm sure there's some people up there that still ask that question to this day.
Yep.
So, the name Jefferson was selected after a Siskiyou County Daily News contest. Pretty cool. So
Siskiyou keeps on just popping up, doesn't it?
Yeah, Siskiyou County keeps on bringing them up. So J.G. Mandel of Eureka, California, submitted the winning name and seal, depicting a mine pan etched with 2 X's, signifying the double cross of Salem and Sacramento. And here's another thing I think people don't understand about the Jefferson movement, too, is the 2 X's mean Salem and Sacramento. Now, Sacramento being the state capital of the time in 41, as it is today, and Salem being the state capital in 41 as the time it is today in Oregon. People don't know that there were actually counties up in Oregon that were wanting to do this as well back in 41.
Yeah, and actually, the Jefferson movement started in Southern Oregon.
Right.
That's where we get our roots from.
Yeah. We're very independent.
Yeah, absolutely.
A very independent movement. I don't blame people in those areas just as much as I don't blame us down here for wanting liberty.
Yep.
So that brings us into the current movement. Now, the current movement, it started in 2013, again, in Siskiyou County. They just keep on giving.
Yep.
They love everybody. When the Board of Supervisors there voted 4-1 in favor of withdrawing from California, formed the 51st state, and other counties have joined in with either boards of supervisors voting in favor of, which not a lot of them did. So we had to go the other route and get signatures from the people in their respective counties. As of today, we've got 23 counties, which is nothing to laugh at, if you ask me.
Absolutely not.
When there's 55 counties in California and you got 23 of them under your belt, I'd say you have a serious problem on your hands.
Yep.
So with the latest entries into Jefferson are our county, Stanislaus, and Mariposa, being the new members of the Jefferson family, which is very exciting. I can't wait. So what are Jefferson's goals as a state? When we become our own state, what is the goal of Jefferson? We've already discussed the beginning of the movement, where it started in our current movement today in 2013. We already discussed the 1941 movement in a good detail and where we got our symbolism from. But that doesn't explain everything about Jefferson. You want to make your own state, so how are you going to do it? What are you going to comprise it of? So whenever you talk to a Jeffersonian, the thing on their lips is representation. Representation, 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 now and always. Our goal, our plan, is one representative for every 2,500 people and one senator for every 6,000, which is very doable.
It's going back to what our representation used to be like.
Yes, that's actually the original intent of the first California Constitution. Those were the original numbers to an extent.
Right, and those were good numbers, so we should really go back to them.
Right, and let's look at it like this, about the one for every 2,500. I live in a town of 20,000 people. My town would have 8 assemblymen or representatives, however we call them. We would have 8. Literally, that one little town would have 8.
That would be fantastic.
Right. So it wouldn't be a stretch of the imagination to know or personally know my representation. He, she, whoever they may be. I can go to their door and knock on it and go, hello, so-and-so, and I really would like to talk to you about this certain law that you discussed. I think it's great, or I don't think it's great. And if he's a good, or if she's good, he or she is going to go, come on in, let's discuss this in detail.
It's about having access to your representation.
Right.
Because this is what we fought the Revolutionary War over, is not having representation.
Yeah, that's exactly why we fought.
So it's really important that we have direct access to our representatives. We have their ear, and they're willing to listen to us and listen to our input, because they represent us. We voted them into office, and as government employees and legislators, they work for us. Right.
And like I said, I love the ratio, because you will know your representative personally. You'll be seeing them in the grocery store, and it won't be a full-time legislator either. Not like California.
We'll get away from the idea of having career politicians or career legislators.
Right. And what I like about this is it allows the everyday person to be a representative. So my thoughts on that is, at this particular individual that would never have a chance to be in office ever, because they're just Joe Schmo or regular Sally, and you would get them in there and they would do an excellent job, better than what we have today. So it's not a far-fetched that individual might move on to a state senator or a actual U.S. representative or a actual U.S. senator, and their caliber would be much more better than what we have today. I find that to be more exciting.
Yeah, it's much more appealing when you actually have your neighbor down the street representing you in the U.S. House of Representatives than these people who are just untouchables. They're up there. They're in D.C. We don't see them.
It's a bottom up fix.
Yeah,
that's why I like it. Now let's move on to the next big thing. We know the governor, what he does and all that. That's pretty simple and easy to figure out. What about the judicial branch? I mean, that's kind of the other big elephant in the room, so to speak, because it is a big elephant in the room. Right now California has 2,500 judges. I'm just saying off the top of my head, and we only have 125 representatives, and only 80 of them in the House or in the Assembly. They can't watch all the judges.
No.
Not to mention all the bloated the executive branch too.
Right, and it's lacking the accountability.
Yeah, it's really lacking the accountability. The People's House is severely been hamstringed. Severely, I mean, to the point where it's basically hogtied. They can't even do anything if it wanted to.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the judicial branch. Now, the vision is a Supreme Court with 7 justices, and these justices will be elected by districts for a period of time of 10 years.
So no lifetime appointments.
No lifetime appointments, which
the big thing.
Yeah. So if the guy's a dirtbag or she's a dirtbag,
yep,
get out.
Yep.
We don't need you. We don't want you.
Yeah. You don't have these judges who are sitting for, I mean, some of these judges could sit for the entire lifetime that you're alive.
Right. Well, let's go right back into the U.S. Senate side of things. I mean, Dianne Feinstein has been the senator since I've been a little kid.
Yeah.
In my 30s.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, there have been justices that when my dad was a teenager have still on the Supreme Court.
Yeah. Oh,
so
yeah.
I find this to be more appealing than what we have today. Now, the same thing would apply to the Superior Court, and they would be elected for no more than a period of 4 years. So again, we would still be able to say, you're a crappy judge.
Yeah.
Get out. You know, again, we're coming back to the accountability of the government to the people.
Yeah, and that's something that we lack at pretty much all levels of our government at this point.
Right. But there's something we can do about the state. And one of the more interesting offices is a new office, and it's a new idea. And it's, I may be butchering it, but the Office of Constitutionality. It might be named something else down when we actually have a constitution. But the premise of this office is the legislator will either make a law, let it go through, or one branch will make one law, send it to this Office of Constitutionality. The office will check it and make sure that it is within the confines of the Jefferson Constitution and the U.S. Constitution. And if it is, it will be pushed back to the House or to the Senate for a vote on a state level.
Which would be important because we wouldn't have things like sanctuary city laws.
Right. And
it would be stopped before it even became a law.
Right. It would stop a lot of problems in terms of, you know, this would save a lot in legal fees, too, for the state and for individuals.
Yeah, and it helps our government actually run more efficiently.
Right. And that office will be an elected office, much like a sheriff or the governor or your representative. So, excuse me, that individual will be an elected official, and I'm sure they'll probably have people underneath him as well, which I find very fascinating to see how that will turn out, to watch that process go through. Now, I could be wrong. It could be, you know, it has to go through both the houses and the Senate, be voted on, and then go to him for the final say. Or it could be, you know, the House sends it to them before they vote and say, he goes, go ahead, vote on it, you're good to go.
Yeah. There's a lot of different ways it could play out, but it's really a new concept. I mean, this isn't a thing that's around. No other states have this.
No, I mean, it didn't even cross through the founders' minds. I mean,
yeah.
So this is a new concept, and I'm eager to see how this works out.
Yeah, I am as well.
In a once we get to a constitutional rough draft, which is coming. I don't know when. Matthew doesn't know when either. But
nope.
Once we get it, I will tell you right now. Matthew and I will be the first ones to read it and tell you our thoughts about it.
Yep, and then we're going to pass it on to you guys, the listeners.
Mm-hmm. And I would encourage the listeners to read it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, as the movement stands today, Stanislaus County and Mariposa, right now we are in gathering signature mode. So we're gathering signatures to declare. At least here in Stanislaus, we were very close. Like, so close we can just taste it.
We're so close. So close.
Mariposa, I don't know, but I'm sure we'll get updates on them sooner rather than later. Now, that goes into the discussion of what do we do? Or what are we doing? Well, like I said, here in Stanislaus, we are gathering signatures, as with Mariposa. Right now, the other 21 counties are either fundraising for the lawsuit. Now, we are actively engaged with the Citizens of Fair Representation in a lawsuit for non-representation and delusion of vote. Now, it's pretty simplistic about the non-representation part. We're not represented.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you are going to agree.
Yep. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And now, with the delusion of vote, you want to explain that a little more, go more in depth in that. What does that mean?
All right, so delusion of vote. Let's imagine now. Say you got a nice, good old bottle of whiskey. It could be Jack Daniels. It could be anything. Doesn't matter. Put a nice tall glass on the table. Pour it halfway in. You got pretty much a concentrated glass of whiskey. Let's bring some water in. So we're going to pour the other half of the water in that cup. What have I done?
Now you have really watery whiskey.
Yeah, well, I've diluted it.
Yes.
I've made it less of what it was. So you're not going to get the same potency as you would before. Same thing with voting. So let's make a good example. My father, he was born in the 60s in California, and he became of age of majority in the 70s, in the late 70s. His vote was worth more in the 70s than my vote is today in 2018.
Right, because our representation...
Yeah, our representation never went up, right. But our population did. Now, what does that mean? Why are we even doing that? Let's explain that one. Why don't we add more? Because it makes sense. You grow in population, you should have more people representing you.
Right.
This is not an oxymoron thing here. It's just makes sense.
Right.
Well, what happened is in the 1860s, the California legislature at that time decided that they didn't want the Chinese to have a nice stake in representation because, they were there to build the railroads. So what they did was we're going to cap the legislative at 80 in the Assembly and 40 in the Senate. And they said, that's it. Well, at the time, it worked out because, we had about 400,000 people in the state. So manageable. There is a...
With that number of people, you can reasonably represent the number of people in your district or area and still be able to convey their thoughts and ideas back to the legislature.
Right. It's more easier for you to knock on your legislative door at that moment in time.
Yep.
I can't knock on my legislative door or Heath Flores. I couldn't knock on his door.
Nope.
No. I wouldn't probably even see his secretary.
Yeah. Because how many people does Heath Flores represent?
500,000.
Yeah. And how can you reasonably represent 500,000 people, hear their ideas, hear what they want you to do? How can you reasonably talk to 500,000 people?
Right. So that's delusion of vote in a basis. I mean, and we also touched on the representative ratio too. That's one of the major complaints of Jefferson. But the lawsuit began last year. And we filed.
Last year being 2017?
Yes, last year being 2017. So we filed in federal court, and our judge name was Judge Miller. And at the time, she granted us our 3-judge court right off the bat. Done. We thought we were on our way. We were on our way to the Supreme Court. Because in a non-representation and delusion of vote case, one judge cannot rule on it. Justice Scalia basically said that in one of his dissenting arguments, that the judges cannot by themselves rule on a non-representation or delusion of vote case without prior case law determining it. No one has done this before. There is no case law in this. So we got our 3-judge court. Well, what had happened was California decided to be, how do I put it?
California.
Yep, California. And they did an ex parte motion.
Okay. And what exactly is an ex parte motion? Can you give me more details on what exactly that means?
Okay, so I'm not a lawyer, so please take this with a grain of salt. I'm not a lawyer by any means of the stretch of the imagination. But from my understanding and hearing and reading, is an ex parte motion is basically your client is dying. And it was basically a way for them to try to take away our 3-judge court, which eventually the judge did pull that decision away for the ex parte motion. Then we went to court to basically edit our original lawsuit against the state. And in that court hearing, the judge turned to the defense and basically asked if I deem the legislative ratio unconstitutional in the state, what would you do? He had the audacity to say, well, I don't know, Your Honor. I never thought of that.
Wow.
Yeah, the arrogance of it, isn't it?
Yeah. It's quite arrogant, and it kind of shows you the whole reason for Jefferson.
Right. They think we're a bunch of hicks.
Yeah.
They think we're a bunch of hicks. So what happened was she decided that, okay, I want you to, in 10 days, I'm going to ask you ask questions, what I want you to do, and figure this out for me, in 10 days. Basically, she wanted to know, how I would put this is she's trying to get away from this, get out from under this. So, 10 days pass and nothing. 30 days pass, nothing. 60 days pass, nothing. There's a pattern here. So we get to about 140 days out, and we kind of just asked the judge very nicely what's going on, and she decided to dismiss the case without prejudice. And I know a lot of Jefferson people at the time, including myself, were like, oh my God, the case was dismissed. But here's the good thing. Without prejudice.
Right.
So what that means is we can refile all our stuff. So she sent us all the questions she wants. Unfortunately, she wanted it in 10 days and wanted it only in 25 pages.
Wow.
Yeah. Well,
it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, she asked so many questions. She asked one question on 12 pages. We both know legalese stuff, and it takes 12 pages to ask one question. How are you going to get everything you want in Jefferson in 25 pages?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, the good thing is they asked for an extension till the 18th of this month. So that was yesterday.
It was yesterday as we recorded this.
Yes, yesterday as we recorded this. So they filed, and they did do with the 25 pages because the courts just said, no, it's 25 pages. So they discussed this up at the radio show in Reading that they were going to file with the 25 pages. They did everything they could to cram everything in there, the lawyers, which I commend the lawyers. A lot of them are doing this pro bono for us, which we should all thank them for that. Truly, and truly, just we should all be thanking them for that. So we're now still in waiting mode for the lawsuit, basically. So that brings me into current events. What's been going on in the news with California, and I would say one of the biggest pieces of news is Jeff Sessions coming in and suing the state for its sanctuary law, which I find pretty interesting.
It is.
Now, words mean something. When people say something, words mean something. This is going back through all time. Here's what Jeff Sessions had to say. Immigration law is the preview of the federal government. The administration and the Justice Department are determined to make it work effectively for the people. I understand that we have a wide variety of political opinions out there on immigration, but the law is in the books and its purpose is clear. There is no nullification. There is no succession. Federal law is the supreme law. I would invite any doubters to Gettysburg and to the graves of John C. Calhoun and Abraham Lincoln. A refusal to apprehend and deport those, especially the criminal element, effectively rejecting all immigration law and creating an open border system. Open borders is a radical, irrational idea that cannot be accepted.
This has been in the news a lot lately, especially as we've seen counties and cities declare themselves sanctuary states, effectively going against federal law. So right. It's pretty big that Sessions is actually suing the state of California over this. It's something that's, again, it's been in the news. There's been a lot of political debate around this. And so Sessions actually coming into the state of California and saying it's going to be sued has actually opened up a lot of choices for us as those of us who want to leave California and become Jefferson.
Now, I'm going to direct everybody's attention to this part of the paragraph. There is no nullification. There is no succession. Federal law is the supreme law of the land. I would invite any doubters to Gettysburg and to the graves of John C. Calhoun and Abraham Lincoln. Sessions is saying something very, very specific here. Now, I take that statement as California, don't be dumb like Alabama and the other southern states that seceded from the Union in the 1860s.
Right. He's saying we don't want another civil war on our hands.
Basically. But even the people on the left decided that they wanted to jump in on this. And our venerable newest senator, Kamala Harris, her response to Jefferson on this is Attorney General Jeff Sessions has no credibility talking history, slavery, and Reconstruction of the Civil War. They even got what Jeff Sessions was saying. This is a seditious act. You can't be doing this. And much like the Oakland mayor, Kamala Harris has come out and supported her. And here's what she said. I support the Oakland mayor who would help criminally legal aliens evade deportation 100%.
That's not okay for a U.S. senator to be openly condoning acts of sedition against the U.S. government.
Right. I find it appalling.
Yeah, I do as well.
I find it extremely appalling and worrisome. A sitting senator in this day and age talking like that. So one of the things that I've overheard, because a lot of people are saying the same thing, even across the country, that California is seeming like it's its own little tin pot nation here, and it certainly feels like it. I mean, you've got Governor Brown bouncing around the world, going to China and making a deal with them, and saying that California is going to be part of the Paris Climate Accords.
Right, which he's not even he's not allowed to do that. It's not possible for him to do that.
No, not without the consent of Congress.
Right.
No, he has no right or no authority to do that.
It's just very arrogant, and it's unfortunate because a lot of our politicians seem to be like that in California.
Right. So I cannot say it any more better than Mark Beard can. And we're going to play a little clip of Mark Beard saying something about this, and it's very enlightening.
This is beginning to smack of Virginia, West Virginia to me. What say you?
Well, I think it's exactly the same thing. I mean, the cause is slightly different, but nevertheless, we have a large area of the state of California which is not lawless and not engaged and does not wish to engage in the insurrection, and that's very obvious. Several counties have signed anti-sanctuary state ordinances and resolutions. Several small cities and towns have signed them. The bulk of the people here from our evidence and research are against it. I think the state of California considers itself above the law. The governor, its attorney general, its United States senators consider themselves above the law. They're participating no less than John C. Calhoun did in 1861 in the obvious insurrection, sedition, and they're engaged in open conflict with the United States of America. We, the counties of Jefferson, choose not to participate in that insurrection, and we therefore demand statehood. And we should all begin to inform every single United States senator, every single congressman, that we demand separation under Article 4, Section 3 of the United States Constitution. And since our state government is involved in insurrection, we have no obligation to apply to the legislature beforehand. It's time for the federal government to create the 51st state in order for us to maintain the rule of law in the northern 23 counties.
It's now 9:35 a.m., Sunday, March the 11th, 2018. 9:35, Sunday, March the 11th, 2018. You just heard what Mark Baird said, folks.
So that explains it all right there. So what do you think about that, Matthew?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're back in the same situation that we were in when Virginia seceded from the Union.
Mm-hmm. And the people of West Virginia formed their
they
state.
Formed their own state, and as Jeffersonians, we want to do the same thing.
I agree. I think it's time. The time has come for 51, as they say.
Yep, I definitely believe so. Especially as our state government is committing treason and sedition against our federal government. I don't want to be a part of that. Nope. I'm not seditious, nor am I treasonous. I am a United States citizen first. I happen to live in California.
Unfortunately.
I'm not, as they say, a Californian where we're above the law and there's crazy stuff that's happening at our state legislature level.
Oh, no, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree with you. I'm originally from North Carolina, so my family has been from North Carolina since I don't know when. So we've already discussed this once. It didn't work. You cannot nullify federal law. I mean, this is even constitutional law here that they are willfully thumbing their nose at.
Right, and that's not something to be taken lightly, and I think we as the citizens, we need to say something.
Right.
We can't just let our state government get away with this anymore.
Nope, not anymore. To gather more information about Jefferson, please go to the 2 other radio stations. The Jefferson State of Mine on the KCNR1460.com, where you can get their podcast or listen to it live stream. They are between the hours of 9 and 10 on Sunday. We have the State of Jefferson Hour on KAHI.com. And same applies. You can listen to it live between the hours of 10 and 11 on Sunday, or you can listen to it through their podcast.
This episode is sponsored by Al Certified Safe and Lock. Al's offers locksmith services, alarm systems for a range of applications, including burglary, fire, tamper, medical emergencies, and much more. Al's has been locally owned and managed in Modesto for nearly 70 years. With thousands of loyal and satisfied customers, you can be sure Al's will meet and exceed your needs. For more information, call 1-800-700-4780 or go to alsalarm.com. Go to alsalarm.com. That's ALSALARM.com. Thanks so much to Al Certified Safe and Lock for sponsoring our show. If you're interested in sponsoring our show, head over to JeffersonLibertyRadio.com or email us at sponsors@JeffersonLibertyRadio.com.
And if you are interested in contacting Matthew and I,
please go to our contact page, JeffersonLibertyRadio.com/contact, or email us at feedback@JeffersonLibertyRadio.com.
yes, we would love to hear any questions, comments, and concerns that you might have, or any other ideas that you might want to discuss.
Absolutely.
We would be more than happy to discuss them.
Absolutely.
We thank you for listening to our very first podcast. We are very excited to keep this running, and we hope that you come and see us next week.
Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next week.